WesWes Show.
Kia ora, talofa, and welcome to the RUCK, a podcast where we discuss all things rugby. I'm the host of the RUCK, Stace, so thank you for joining us for another edition. Now, we here in Auckland have been in lockdown for the past, month, and with level 3 looming, we thought it's a good opportunity to dust the cobwebs off and get back into the RUCK and get it up and running again. So I'll introduce our guest for today, another regular, so you should know him quite well, from the city of the future, Joey. Joey, mate, thanks for jumping on today, Oos.
Thank you for having me once again.
Nice, brother.
Great to be here.
Yeah, always good to have you, mate. Knowledgeable man. But I'll start with some housekeeping like normal. So we've got our website up and running. So check us out there, www.weswesnet.com. And also you can follow the RUCK on Twitter and Facebook. So give us a follow and give us a like on there. So yeah, we've got quite a bit to get through, Joey, since our last episode was about a month ago-ish. So obviously the Mitre 10 Cup has rebooted since the lockdown. The Rugby Championship, that's in full swing and it's been going for a bit now. But I wanted to start by just congratulating me and yourself. The RUCK has been nominated for a New Zealand Podcast Awards. So that obviously tells me that we're doing something right and that people like what we're doing. But I wanted to come to you, Joey, because you've got a double nomination. One nomination for the RUCK, and your other podcast, The Pitch, is also up for an award, mate. So a bit of a shock for us to be nominated, but mate, what have you made of the nomination, and tell us about your other one as well?
I think it's great to get that kind of recognition from a body that wants to put some awards together for content creators like us. I was quite humbled to hear that I got nominated for my own podcast, The Pitch, as well as this one. It's awesome to see that we're getting recognised, and obviously the perspective that we're putting across to our audience is that of Pasifika. So and The Pitch as well. It's coming through the eyes of Pasifika. So it's nice to be recognised by, I guess, mainstream on that front. So yeah, it's cool. Very cool.
Yep, I agree with that. Actually, the RUCK, it's slightly different to some of the other rugby podcasts that you hear around, and that unique perspective, I think that might be something that got us over the line with a nomination. But hopefully we can win it. And thanks to whoever nominated us and the fans who keep on listening, because I think that really helps us to get through. And it's an honour to be nominated. If we win, we'll be grateful, but just to be nominated and to be recognised, just for a couple of guys who have a few beers and have a chat, I think that's really, really humbling, like you mentioned. But
I know a couple of listeners of note who most likely would have nominated us. One of them is
nice.
Adam Thompson.
Oh, yep.
Adam Thompson and Carlos Spencer.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Name a couple. I'll pass that on to the judges of the awards. Some name dropping. Hopefully that gets us some. Hopefully that gets us over the line.
King Carlos is actually keen and interested in being a guest on the show at some point.
Oh, nice. I'll try not to be too much of a fanboy because he is my all-time favourite player. But that'll be great. It will be great to get him on there. Just something for our listeners to look forward to. He's still involved, I think, in the game a little bit, and he still looks in tip-top shape. So might have to get some training tips off him as well. But it'll be great if we get him on. I wanted to look at the Mitre 10. So our last episode we did was a Mitre 10 Cup preview, and that obviously happened before, the level 4 lockdowns and everything, put everything on hold. And unfortunately, you weren't there. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm going to say unfortunately, you weren't there, Joey. So it was myself and Rog. We ended up listening to Roger's tips and putting our our $10 on that. So I'm not sure if you caught much of it, but Rog picked Bay of Plenty to take it out, and we put our $10 on that. And just looking at the table, it looks like they're coming second to last, so that's not looking too good. But I'll just get your thoughts on the Mitre 10 Cup, mate. What have you made of it so far? And just give us a couple of predictions around a win if you've got one. Anyone stand out yet?
Hawke's Bay is always a standout for me in the last few seasons. I've become quite a fan of theirs. They not only do they really develop the local talent, but the ones they do bring from outside the region seem to gel with the province really well. So they've obviously got a family feel there, and I think for me it's Hawke's Bay, and then looking at another team actually that I'm really interested in following is, I don't know if they're in the grade, but East Coast Bays, who are being coached by Jose Gia,
Oh, okay.
and they've got the involvement of Nehemilna Skara. He's gone to play for them, and so has someone else is involved there, but I forget who. But yeah, those are the two names of note at East Coast Base. They're trying to bring that team back up, and over the years, as you've seen, they have a really tight culture there. So it'd be nice to see some success come out of that club, out of that province.
Yep,
But
I agree
Hawke's
with
Bay,
that.
it's
It's
Hawke's
always
Bay for
good
me.
when it's always good when they give back. All those great players who have had long, distinguished careers go back and give back to the grassroots of the game and that. So yeah, East Coast Blaze, that's a nice shout. That's something we haven't had on the podcast yet. No one's given them a shout. So yeah, good call on that. And yeah, Hawke's Bay, I quite like that pick, Smokey. Them having the Ranfurly Shield as well makes them just play that much better. They want to hold it as long as they can, and that makes you just dig that extra 1-2% more and find a win. So yeah, Hawke's Bay is quite a good shout. I haven't watched much with Auckland. Obviously, I'm a diehard Auckland fan of them being out, but yeah, it's just good to have rugby back on the airwaves again. I listened to, I think, on some of those short stories that we've got on our YouTube channel. We talked
Oh, I
about
lost you, mate.
RTS Roger Tuivasa-Sheck coming back. So I'm not sure when Auckland's going to be back in, but mate, he could be, I suppose, a beneficiary if you think of it like that. He could have, just study a bit more video and work on some of the finer nuances during the lockdown. It might be better to acclimatise. What do you think he's going to be doing? How do you think he'll go when Auckland's finally back in? Hopefully.
Sorry, can you just repeat the player, because I just lost you for a moment there. Technical
Oh, so
difficulties here in the city of the
yep.
future.
Yeah, just talking about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, just I listened to I think you and Cam's had a video on YouTube about it, which has got quite a lot of views. So just how you think he'll go once Auckland's back in, and do you have any clue on what position you think he might line up at?
Yeah, well, the thing with Rog is rugby was his first love, so the transition back to rugby should be quite a natural one compared to other players who've come from league and never played rugby union before. In terms of positions, I really want to see him at 12, at inside centre, second 5/8, or whatever you want to call it these days. And the reason being is because I want to see him get his hands on the ball as much as possible. He can do some amazing things. He can set people up outside. He can find gaps that aren't really there. He can step two people at a time. So the more he gets the ball in hand, I think the better. And I think at centre in rugby union, he'll be well placed to put his name in for higher honours.
Yeah, good call there. One of your favourite sons, TJ Fayane. I think he's taking a contract overseas, so there is an opening in the 12 jersey there. And I'm with you. I hope he gets that. Hope he gets a go in that jersey. Obviously, we don't talk too much about the other code in league, but I was a big Warriors fan, and it hurt when he left. So if he can come to my other team, Auckland, I'll be happy with that. And if he plays well, that'll be bloody good. But yeah, good shouts there.
Just on TJ Faiane too.
Um,
Um,
yep.
yeah, just on TJ, he's been the quiet toiler for as long as I can remember. When he first came into the setup, at Auckland, he was just that guy who wasn't flashy, just did his job well, and complemented the guys on either side of him very well. And he did that for years. He's just really consistent, and for that, I believe he's a great rugby player who was an unsung hero for a lot of years. And I wish him all the best on his next part on his rugby journey. So TJ, thank you for the memories, brother.
Yep. Hopefully, he comes back to goes back to the game. I'm not sure how old he is. I think he's still young enough to come back and give New Zealand rugby another decent crack. So I suppose on a good note, he isn't. I don't believe played any rugby for any of the New Zealand rep teams. So maybe he might be eligible for the Manu after that, and it could be some good pick up there for the Manu, possibly. Yeah. We need all the help we can get there at the Manu. Obviously, myself and yourself, Joey of Samoan descent, we want to see the Manu playing really well. So if they can get their hands on some quality players, and he is one, that'd be a good pickup for them. Yep. Yeah, the good thoughts there. Yep. Hawke's Bay. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I think he's TJ Faiani is of the same, not same mold, but same situation as Leua, who's now with the
Oh
Mount
yeah.
Samoa. He was someone who was good enough to be in the mix for All Black selection, but chose to play for Mount Samoa, and now he's doing well overseas, playing big contract, and good on him.
Yep. Yeah, I suppose we'll probably move on to this next one because Moana Pasifika have been looking to sign some players. Obviously, they want to get some Polynesian players. He would have been a perfect guy because I know they have some stipulations. I'm not sure if they still stand with their unconditional license that they have to have Pacific declared or neutral guys who have the possibility of declaring their allegiance to to play. So we'll just look at that Moana Pasifika because there was an article that came out, and we've covered this subject quite extensively. So I want to carry it through to its completion. They've announced that they've signed 30 players. So I don't think they've released the names of those 30 players, and we'll continue to follow that story throughout the podcast like we've been doing. But I just get your thoughts. What have you made of that announcement? 30 players signed up, and
I
just
think it's
Moana
great.
Pacifica in general.
I think it's great. I think it's a step in the right direction. It'll be interesting to see who they've actually chosen, and where they've come from, and who's missed out on signing. So I wonder if there is as much Samoa Rugby Union, Tonga Rugby Union, Fiji Rugby Union as we would like as fans. But I guess that remains to be seen.
Yep. I'm really interested where the players have come from because I would have assumed they would have got the players from the NPC. But we haven't seen enough of the guys. Well, I haven't. We've only had a couple of games that you can sign guys. I would have thought they might have waited a bit longer. I know the New Zealand franchises have filled most of their teams, so they could have. There's always a standout guy who comes out of nowhere. So maybe they could have grabbed a couple. They still got 6 spots left, I believe, to fill. So, yeah, I suppose that's another thing. I'm really just interested in where the players they've come from, and if they've got any, like you mentioned, any of the Samoan or Tongan internationals. So that will be good to see. But the fact that they've got 30 players, I think that's a step forward. I mean, anyone who listens to me on the podcast will know that I was a fan of Kanaloa, and that was the bid that I was backing. But obviously they didn't get in, and this is the team that we got. So I'll be fully supporting Moana Pasifika because that's better than no team, I'll tell you that. As a fan of Polynesian rugby, we haven't had a team, a professional club team or franchise team ever since rugby's been professional for over 25 years now. So the fact we've got one team, it's not the team that I wanted, but we'll take it. and I'll back them 100%. So, you've got any other thoughts? Or we'll talk about Kanaloa a little bit after, and just where to next for them. But just any other thoughts on Moana Pasifika and the team that's through, that's
Um,
been coming through, and the bid they
yeah,
won?
I got the same stance as you on that one, Stace, where Kanaloa was the team that I wanted in there because it meant we had more control, actually full control over the team, rather than bits and bobs with different organisations. But like you say, they are the team that has been selected and are in there in the Super Rugby. Them along with Drua, I'll be supporting. So it will be interesting to see the caliber of players in various positions that they have earmarked for this particular squad. And I wonder when they're actually going to release the names of the team list, the squad list, and how they're going to select, a run-on team each week. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of setup they have, what their plan is around injuries and interchanges and what have you, and through the season whether they're going to actually be competitive. You've got I think Aaron Mauger, correct me if I'm wrong, is the head coach. So obviously
Oh, okay.
he's a great.
Oh, I'm not sure. I've missed that announcement.
I think he's a great rugby head. I might be wrong, but I
Mm.
think that's what I remember hearing is that Aaron Mauger has put his name forward for the coaching role. So again, that's our team. We'll back them. At the same time, it's like I think the point to note is what we did with Kanaloa and questioning everything that went on in the background with the selection or the bringing together of this concept, which is now the reality of a team called Moana Rugby, Moana Pasifika. Um, I think now those organisations like NZRPA and NZ Rugby are now aware that we won't just sit back and let it be as it might have been in the past. We actually will question everything. So I think that in itself will help these bureaucrats, if you like, think twice about giving us the raw deal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that too. That is one of the positives to come out of it. So I remember, the idea of having a Pacific team in Super Rugby isn't a new idea. It's been around since basically Super Rugby started. So that's 25 odd years. And New Zealand Rugby has always come forward. And I brought this up when we talked to Tracy Artinga, who's the CEO of Kanaloa. New Zealand Rugby has always said, "Oh, it's not financially viable. There's these reasons why they can't get a team in." And then Tracy comes in and she says, "All your reasons are all eats. We can don't worry about the funding. It's not financially viable. We can sort out the funding. You can't. There's not the players aren't good enough. Don't worry about that. We can sign all the players." And all those excuses got thrown out. And then straight away, once all those excuses got thrown out and they got exposed, New Zealand Rugby, those excuses were all eats. They were able to come up with another bid on the spot with Moana Pasifika. So I mean, that's one positive. all those things, someone questioned it, and then they've come up with their own bid. So definitely positive there. And I just wanted, just for our listeners out there, so I did say before that I was a Kanaloa supporter, and that was a big part of the reason why I just wanted to clarify my response, just in case anyone's listening thinking, what did you like about Kanaloa? Well, Moana Pasifika is funded by New Zealand Rugby, so they get a big say in who gets recruited. They've got a big say in their 80% of 80% of Polynesian eligible neutral. I think that was one of the clauses they wanted, and 20% of guests of whoever they want. And those all came about. They can put those stipulations in because they've come up with the funding. But Kanaloa, they were able to come up with their own money. They didn't need any New Zealand Rugby grants or anything like that to get it over the line. So because they were able to come up with their own money, they could come up with their own things. They didn't want they wanted 100% all Polynesian players, and they didn't have to bow down to New Zealand Rugby's, I guess, rules because they didn't have any of their funding. So that was why I wanted Kanaloa. It didn't get over the line, and Moana Pasifika is the team that we got. So I think we're going to jump in behind them and hope they go well. But yeah, I think Kevy's involved, and it sounds like he's doing some great things. The fact that if they've got 30 players over the line, I mean that's something to get that over done quite quickly. If Aaron Mauger's the coach, then that's another good thing. So it looks to be coming together nicely, and we'll just follow that story through because we've followed it through from the start, and we've been one of the podcasts who have really tried to bring that content to you. But mate, Joey, have you got anything else you want to add on Moana Pasifika Kanaloa? We did have a question for you, but I'll let you speak.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add on Moana Pasifika?
Yeah, just quickly, coming from a different angle, I think it all comes down to not just control, but who has broadcasting rights. So who can do the deals with the broadcasters? That's where it all comes into. And that's where I feel like NZ Rugby have strong-armed the situation and put together the right people in place who represent us to make this a reality. I think they made some smart moves there in getting Pasifika representatives in the Moana Pasifika organisation who represent us, who can help them with their agenda. And I wholeheartedly believe that New Zealand Rugby's agenda isn't necessarily about the growth of Moana or Pasifika Rugby. It's more about broadcasting rights, because at the end of it all, that revenue from the broadcasting deals comes back to where? Doesn't come back to Samoa Rugby Union, Tonga Rugby Union, Fiji Rugby Union. Comes back to the New Zealand Rugby Union. They get to control where that gets divided out to. That gets divided out to New Zealand Rugby. So the question on my mind will be, until I have solid answers, it will be, how does Samoa Rugby Union, Fiji Rugby Union, and Tonga Rugby Union benefit from Moana Pasifika? So we'll keep questioning that. We'll keep tabs. We'll keep watching. We'll keep supporting. But we'll keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, and I know that we've actually heard those questions being asked from Selala Mapuso, who's the coach of Whadamanu, and Kifu, Totai Kifu was the coach of Tongan rugby team. They've both had asked those same questions. So I think that's going to be the next step. Is hopefully if we can see someone coming through, playing really well for Moana Pasifika, and then graduating to the national side of one of these Pacific teams, then we can say, hey, look, this is a success, and this is a pathway for them. So that's what I suppose that's what we all hope happens next. But mate, I know that you have a bit of a close relationship with some of the people at Kanaloa. So I just want to ask you, I'm not sure if you could actually answer this, to be fair, but where to next for Kanaloa? Now that they didn't get the Super Rugby bid, and do you have any thoughts on what they might do or where they might go,
I
or
think
what their future plans might be?
I think they will hang tight. Like, they will wait out this first season, this inaugural season for Moana Pasifika, and see how that goes, and see whether or not there's an opportunity after this initial season for them and draw for another team to enter into the mix, either in the place of one of those two, or in addition. Who knows? The Sansa, or whoever it is, the governing body that runs Super Rugby these days, they may decide at the end of this 2022 season that they want more teams in there, which would then present another opportunity for Kanaloa to throw their hat in again. So I guess we'll see, but I don't know anything solid in terms of certain next steps for them. But my guess would be that they would ride out this first season in Super Rugby for Moana and Drua, and see what they want to do then. They may even go to the MLR.
Yep.
Like what we have here. Well.
Kia ora, kia ora, kia
Well,
ora.
Oh,
kia ora, we
CM
just
Steeler.
welcome our county's Manukau resident supporter, Rog. Better late than never, Rog. Mate, how's it going, brother?
Hey, kia ora, kia ora. Yeah. Sorry, I was watching Celebrity Treasure on and totally forgot.
Wow.
I thought I was going to see
Come on,
Joey
mate.
Ngangai,
Priorities, mate.
the mayor of Hamilton, but yeah.
Oh, nice.
I bet you can taste that KFC already.
No, not really. Been having the odd fried chicken from Pack and Save, to counter
Yes.
the hunger pangs.
You know what? Sometimes I think those ready-made chicken bags are way better.
Yeah.
The cooked chickens and those Louisiana type.
Oh,
ones.
yeah. There's some good
Yeah,
ones.
they have their own selection of fried chicken. It's Pack and Save. I didn't realize that. I did find out when I was working on the motorways last year, and I pulled over a commuter.
Oh.
She was, going at a certain speed
Oy.
that I won't mention, but
Come
then
on.
when I was talking to her through the window, this aroma of chicken came through, and I was thinking, "Whoa, what's the reason?" And she said, "Oh, I'm trying to get dinner home quickly." And I go, "Oh, where'd you get your chicken from?" It was a bucket. It was an actual bucket, but it was during level 4 last year, and it was from Monaco Pack and Save. I go, "Whoa." So I let her on her way.
So you've been in lockdown for too long when you talk about chicken, different types of fried chicken. So yeah, bring on level 3. But Rog, mate, I've got you on, brother. We've been talking about, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Counter Ruck has been nominated for a New Zealand podcast.
Yes, I did hear, and I saw.
What are your thoughts on? What do you get your initial thoughts on our nomination for pod?
I think it's good recognition for the flavour that we bring, I suppose, as the Counter Ruck. As Cam has always tried to endorse a podcast about sport, or in this particular case, rugby, with a Polynesian perspective. By Polynesian, for Polynesian, but then for the open market too. So it's just a good perspective, different perspective to have from all the other podcasts that are out there.
Yeah, nice there, Rog. Hey, we're just talking about Moana Pasifika, so I'm not sure if you heard the announcement, but they've announced the signing of 30 players. So they haven't really given any details in regards to who, but I mean, that's a big step forward. So I know that you've got good relationship with Kevin seeing you is the the general manager there. So I just want to get your thoughts on that before we move on to some international stuff. 30 players from Moana Pasifika.
Yeah, looking forward to how they progress in the real Super Rugby campaign this year, real competition. Last year and the year before has been a bit Mickey Mouse, especially with that last competition that towards the back end of last year, where the Blues apparently, were able to shake the 18 years without a title. But, I remember them getting some sort of a club championship title for the club tennis side title once upon a time in Brisbane somewhere. But, anyway, title's a title. And so, but I'm looking forward to how Moana Pasifika not only fare in this competition, but like everyone else, a bit curious as to who the signings are. I didn't realise that, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see who's in the roster, how many players are generally from the Northern Hemisphere who normally ply their trade there, and how many local players, however local is going to be defined in this scenario, because Moana Pasifika is going to be an Auckland-based franchise and garnered by, obviously there was a lot of interest from trying to get as many local players from within the New Zealand franchises as they already exist, as well as how many are going to be coming from the Tonga, the Samoa rugby unions, and whether there's any Fijian flavour, because we also know that there's going to be the draw side from Fiji in the super competition as well. Yeah, but I'm just in the dark about it, like as everyone else, as to who some potential signings would be. But I think one of the worst kept secrets is probably Sekupe Kepu. Again, I'm just speculating. He was, he returned back to where it all began for him in countries Monaco last year. I mean, this year, signed again, for them this year, and he hasn't played for them since 2006, 2007, since leaving these shores to pursue international, ambitions and playing for the Wallabies. Before that, the Waratahs. So, and Nili Latu. See, I saw he featured for Counties Monaco in their very first game. Is it, is Nili Latu in the mix? Is he part of that roster? I don't know, because there was a lot of talk about Sekupe Kepu taking up one of the spots that could have been potentially for a New Zealand-based player or a New Zealand eligible player. Yet Sekupe Kepu, that's a bit of a marquee signing, not only for Counties Monaco for this season, but I guess there's a bit of a long-term, even though he's well past his best, that there'll be, will remain to be seen. But a lot of experience that he can bring to a franchise that's just kicking off. So the likes of Nili Latu and Sekupe Kepu could be in the mix there just to help sort of steady the ship for the franchise as they had their maiden season in Super Rugby.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting they haven't announced the names. It better not just be, we signed a couple of guys from Waitemata or something like that, so we don't want to say anything, but hopefully some decent guys.
But I guess it would be like, because have the New Zealand teams announced who they have for next year?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure all the teams have been fulfilled already, but that was done before Moana Pasifika received their license. So I think, they started behind the 8 ball. If they've got 30 people over the line, that's a pretty good achievement. So,
Yeah.
I just did want to ask you, Rog, will you be a Moana Pasifika supporter?
I've already purchased one of the jerseys. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I purchased one prior to the that Moana Pasifika game versus the Māori All Blacks. So yeah. I think it was just more. I just wanted to have their very first jersey. I remember when the Blues got, when they first won their championships back in 96, 97. Am I saying this out loud? I always sort of I like that very first initial jersey that they had. And you don't see that around that much. You only see the ones that sort of followed from the 98 season and beyond. But you never really see the 96 jersey. That 96 jersey was a one-off, and the only other place that I've seen the Johnny Ngawamu jersey a few years ago, and he came on as a replacement, and someone was actually, it might have been passed down through family, but then the other jersey that I've seen from 1996 was at the medical sports clinic at the university, Colin Maiden. I don't know what that medical clinic is called these days, but yeah, there's just one in there just being all the signatures, but the original 96 jersey. And I haven't really seen any other person wear it or it displayed anywhere else. But so I just wanted to be in quick to get the original Moana Pasifika. It might be different this year to what it was last year. Who knows? But I guess this year's will be the official Super Moana Pasifika jersey.
Okay, so Chiefs finished last in Super Rugby Trans-Tasman, and then you go by Moana Pasifika jersey, is it? Sweet as.
No. You're reading too much into it. You're reading too much into it.
No, but that's good. I'm glad that we're all supporters because, I mean, Joey, we sort of talked off here. There were some people who were, they felt that the Moana Pasifika wasn't the sort of the team they wanted or didn't fulfill the obligations that they hoped for, and they're sort of not really getting behind it. But I think if you have that mentality that any team's better than no team, which is what we've had, then just jump on board. So I hope they get good support. I'll say that at least. It could be a tough uphill battle for them in their first season, but if they can get some good support out there, out at I think Mount Smart,
Mount
I'll
Smart.
have to refresh. Yeah, out at Mount Smart, COVID permitting, and that'll be good for them in their maiden season. I'll say that for sure.
They might get a whole lot of Warriors supporters wanting to support a winning team at Mount Smart. So
Oh,
who
here we
knows?
go.
Who knows?
Here we go. Okay.
I think it's quite clever. Quite clever that they've got Mount Smart as the place where they've made their home, but I think that's because of the population of supporters that they can reach to, which they will have to find a way to reach out to the MMT demographic and get a lot of that bunch, because they will support if they know the Tongan Rugby Union are involved in some way, which is
I like that
questionable
call.
at this present time.
Yeah,
And speaking
it is.
of
But
Tongan,
it's a
another
good call.
Tongan that comes to mind is Sona Tomalolo. I hear he's back in the
Of
mix
course he is.
somewhere. And
Of
who
course.
knows? If Naholo, if Waisake Naholo doesn't make the mark with either the Crusaders or Highlanders, could he be another inclusion in that 20% that have already played for New Zealand and who are not eligible for any of the Pacific nations? Does a Waisake Naholo come into play there, where you got some of these guys who haven't played for the All Blacks in a couple of seasons? Do they become part of the team that they're looking for and part of the guys that they want to get across the line in terms of roster? So I guess we'll see who the playing 30 is, the squad.
Well, when you're building a franchise from scratch, right, you need to have those experienced guys, those leaders who will help to set a new culture. So Sikope Kipu, I think be a great signing. Nili Latu's another guy who I think he could be a good one in that type of frame of a leader who can help to build a team. So yeah, it'll be interesting. The guys that you've mentioned are all sort of leaders in their own right. So it could be a good
There's
place
Just
to
from a
start.
Manu
But
Samoa perspective,
It's
could
funny.
be Junior Polu Linganga. He was practicing his passes on Facebook the other day, so he's still on the
yes.
mark. Still gets the mark there, hits the mark. So JP could be on standby.
Yes, there's him, and there's also I noticed in the NPC, Jack Lamb is back.
oh
See,
For
that's
yes, yes,
another
Waikato.
name. So
He's
when his
Jack
name
Lamb's
popped
back for
up,
Waikato.
does
For
Liam
Murray.
miss him? If he doesn't get
Miss
another
him.
stint with the Chiefs, does Liam miss him get a go? But then
Yes.
it's a lot of money being thrown around just for a few marquee players, eh?
yeah. It's looking quite interesting because I was wondering where the 30 guys are going to come from. But the names that you guys have mentioned, there are guys out there that if Moana Pasifika tap the right guys on the shoulder, they could come up with a quality
Yeah.
team. But
Mm.
boys, have you
I
guys got
think
anything else you want to add on that one? Oh, carry on, Joey. Yeah.
so. You just need to look deeper into the current NPC
Mm.
roster to see. Oh, actually, yeah, there is 30 players here that could make this Moana Pasifika run a good one.
And it's striking that balance, getting these experienced players that we've mentioned, but then also, it's another Super Rugby franchise, all be for the Pasifika cause, but at the same time, where those players that would normally miss out on the five franchises, you've now got this other team where you can um, blood some of these players who have never played at that next level, who have just been loitering around, especially at NPC, and they just seem to like hit the ceiling there and just float between NPC and club rugby, as well as the odd appearance in the wider training squad for Super. So, do they entertain that and bringing some of these other emerging players through, who could then qualify for that 80% of being eligible for a Pacific Island nation, or who have already, um, given their allegiance to New Zealand or any other international team, in the form of sevens or 15s. So yeah, it'll be an interesting look at the makeup of what should be an exciting squad, I believe, and it should add a really good flavour to and a new dimension to a sort of not, I wouldn't say mundane super competition, competition that sort of, you know, needs a bit of oomph and a little bit of a kick just to reinvigorate the Super Rugby that we fell in love with back in the 90s and early 2000s. Seeing those crowds as well. We don't see those crowds now unless you go to an international match. But then, we had two All Black matches in a row at Eden Park, and the second week, even albeit that was the more exciting game, was not sold out, and that was the first time in a long, long time that an All Black match hasn't been sold out. But then at the same time, it sort of it tells us of the times that we're in. Can Aucklanders afford to fork out two All Black games in a row?
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. I think they do need to reinvigorate Super Rugby a little bit, but I suppose with the Blues being the defending champion and me being a Blues supporter, the views are pretty good from the top. So
Did you just say
it's all right for
defending
us.
champion?
We just won the last Super Rugby competition, whatever that was. That we won.
All I have to say to that, Stace,
The
and I
view's
know
good at the top, mate.
Cam is listening very, very well here, is that will there ever be another Trans-Tasman competition? I don't think there will be. That competition is going to be null and void. No one is ever going to be challenging for that Trans-Tasman competition because, as we know, the Super Rugby competition, including Moana Pasifika in the draw, that's going to be the only competition played in 2022. Is there going to be another Trans-Tasman competition? There's going to be no need for it because this format that Moana Pasifika and the Drua rugby team are involved in, as far as I know, that's the only format going to be played next season. So, and from here on out, for however long the rights are there.
Well, then,
but
Roger,
if you take last Super Rugby, who's the defending champs? We are, so I'll just leave it there. Carry on, Joey.
The Blues will be the first and last Trans-Tasman champion.
Well then, Roger, just to put a positive spin on your neutralizing terminology, like mundane, I think Aucklanders and New Zealanders alike can call the Auckland Blues feat the all-time greatest Trans-Tasman Super Rugby Championship in all of rugby. So there you go. All-time greatest Trans-Tasman Super Rugby.
Wow. I've never heard such ridiculousness ever.
Undefeated season 2 and Super Rugby Trans-Tasman.
For that tournament to go the way it was, and it was just all dependent on how many Australian teams you could beat. That was it. Never to play in that mini competition, not to play the New Zealand teams. But it's just, it was an interesting competition. But hey, the Blues won it hands down based on the criteria for that particular competition. Yeah, I can't argue with it. But like I say, when will it ever be contested again? Because it was only based on trying to extend the bubble, less South African teams as well. So, it'll be interesting to see.
We'll always have that trophy. Then.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Can I throw a spinner
the Super Aotearoa one? That Super Aotearoa competition will probably never be played again unless there's another level 4 lockdown or level 3 lockdown where we are still able to be active as opposed to the rest of the world or the rest of the SANZA partnership.
Can I just throw a spanner in here?
Yep.
So, Cam, you may need to edit this part.
Cam, can you just edit everything that these two have said over the last 2 minutes?
I just want to take a step back, Cam, because I've just learned some breaking news from the Pacific. From the Pacific, and this is regarding the Fijian Drua team that to join the Super Rugby next season. So Fiji's Sun, which is I think one of the national papers in New Zealand, they had journalists that they did an article and the headline is Olympic gold medalist Bolatha, which is spelled Bolaca, Bolatha, honoured as Fijian drawer number 1. Right? Bolatha, on the same Facebook post under Fiji Sun, wrote, firstly, I did not do an interview with Fiji Sun, nor did I make any of those quotes. You are dishonest and, more importantly, lack integrity and credibility as journalists. Clowns.
So they've just heard a rumour and just run with it, eh?
Yeah. So that speaks volumes of, I guess, people in general who hear the first thing they hear and it's gospel for them. And then they start sharing it and spreading it around as if it's absolutely true. So good on this guy Simone for calling it out.
Yep. Nice. Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the draw and the competition, Super Rugby in general, because I think that, that those two new teams adding a new flavour and adding some new excitement could help revitalise the competition. But, boys, I don't want to touch too much more on that. We wanted to look forward. The Rugby Championship, so we'll talk a bit about that. That's been played, the international game has been played right through the lockdowns in Australia. We won't go into all the games, but just sort of get what you guys have made of it. Roger, mate, what have you made of the competition to date? The two South Africa games, losses, and the All Blacks and all the rest of it. Just any thoughts?
I think it's been awesome to watch the second coming of Quay Cooper and how he's come out, and I think everyone knows, a sense of maturity that he's now brought to that side and guiding that side, and just around his general play, and even the aura around him. He's not. 4 years in the wilderness. 2017 was the last time he donned the golden jersey, and he's just come at it with, he's wanting to make the most of it. He's sitting in and around the mid-70s in terms of tests, and 4 years not playing international. He could have been a centurion by now, but I think he's really up to the challenge, and he brings that sense of control, which is much needed. And that was the same that was sort of probably touted for James O'Connor when he came back as well. He's a lot older, more mature in the way that he sees the game and controls the game. So to have even a James O'Connor still in the mix and yet to come back, and then you've got Matt Tomoe, another senior player, level-headed as well. I think it's only encouraging to see where Australia can go. They've proved it now that they can come out with these close clinches with the South Africa and 2 games in a row. The progression of Taniela Tupou from coming off the bench to starting as well. So he seems to be fulfilling all the promises that they were hoping to see him achieve as a player as well, and the dynamic impact that he has with ball in hand, and just some of the skill set that he has. And Sonny Bill Williams made a mention, well, he did grow up in New Zealand as well. So, and that's just typical that we see with our big boys, with the lower numbers, to be able to have those skill sets. We only have to go back to a John Afo or Charlie Famuina, who had those sort of skill sets with being able to offload and pass the ball in the tackle and keep the ball alive. And so it's encouraging for Australia. They've still got a lot of players that they can select from, and a lot of Pasifika boys as well. But I like Tate Dermott. Tate Dermott is, proven to be quite a thorn in the side of the South African side. So seeing if they can improve from what they were in the Bledisloe compared to how they're being able to put 2 wins in a row together, as well as British and Irish Lions series as well, victorious there. So no, hold on, that was South Africa. Sorry, I take it back. That was South Africa. Getting mixed up here. Yes, but I guess they're on the right track, and I've always been thinking every time that these last 2 weeks that they've been successful against the Box, you know, Joey's thoughts are still ringing. That prediction of Joey's that they're going to be taking out the Rugby World Cup 2023.
Oh,
You
you
know
remembered?
I remember, and, you know, it sort of rings in my ear every time they, you know, when they're against the All Blacks, their real tester now is to see if they can be consistent against the likes of the All Blacks. You know, Argentina, they seem to be a team that are just, you know, in there to try and survive. They put on they had a lot of tenacity and showed a bit more control with the ball, but they just don't seem to have that. It almost reminded me of the Contemporary days, you know, as much as you like the players, but they just don't seem to have that firepower. Um, more so in the backs, and they, you know, with the forwards are getting stronger and bigger in size, and you only look at their, you know, the like the Materas and what's the number seven's name for with the beard? I quite like his play as well. But
Crema.
those guys are, you know, good ball runners and good solid forwards that they need to and keep playing. But it just seems that they're always on the back foot trying to play catch up, which is unfortunate because you sort of feel for them, you know, after having that first ever victory over the All Blacks, and it's almost like, you know, can they progress from this? Can they get better? Because it's almost like, oh, have we just is that the best we're ever going to get? Just a one-off win? When's the next win going to be against the All Blacks? We know they can put in a good tussle. You never underestimate them, but it's almost like it's inevitable what the result is. But every now and then they'll surprise us. So, but just seems like we're still going back to the 90s, the way the days of Hugo Porter, then also with Pichot. You know, they seem to ramp up, get go really well, but then they fall back into the normal sort of Argentina that we're accustomed to. But you sort of still have a soft spot that you want them to try and improve and to be a force of rugby because they've been in it a long time. You know, they've been playing international rugby for a very, very long time, albeit amateur, but now they had that professional side of the Jaguares for a little bit in Super Rugby, so that's only added to their cause. But the Springboks, I think they'll be hardened by, you know, encouraged by their series win against the British and Irish Lions, but then falling short against the Australians in the last couple of weeks. But they're there and thereabouts, but they were outplayed, and it didn't help with Faf de Klerk being in the bin, unnecessary penalty that he gave away. But then that was 2 tries that the Wallabies were able to capitalise on during that 10-minute stint in the bin. So a very costly mistake, but I think there's still a force to be reckoned with, especially having not played any international rugby last year.
Nice, very comprehensive there, mates. Roger, as usual. But Joey, mate, I'll come to you. What did you make it? What did you make of the Rugby Championship today? And I'll get you to talk about. I'll get your thoughts on that first, and I'll come back to you on something else.
I think it's provided some really competitive rugby. It's nice to see, as a rugby fan, international rugby fan. It's nice to see Australia fulfilling some of that potential, and obviously playing to the kind of ability that we know and have grown to know during our rugby upbringing. It's nice to see some of that. Obviously, we didn't see that against the All Blacks, and pundits may argue that that's to the All Blacks' benefit and not to theirs, playing them first up in the Rugby Championship. I don't know if these are excuses or what, but you hear it time and time again. But it's nice to see them get some momentum with a couple of games under the belt against the world champions, and I think South Africa are still in the running for the title, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Australia's now in the running as well, but
yep.
But I think those games against the Argentinians, the way that they're currently performing, is probably where they're going to garner points. But all of the three other teams are going to get their easy points. But then it's all dependent on the results against New Zealand versus the Springboks, Australia versus New Zealand. And so,
yeah, it's been entertaining. It's been nice to see certain players play well. I think the game on the weekend in particular that I enjoyed was the Australia-South Africa game. You know, there were moments, there were glimpses of Australian grit where, you know, in the probably the last 10 minutes of play, Hooper made a really big play where he stole the ball and got the penalty for Australia, and that's those moments. They really do count. There was another one where, you know, South Africa have shown time and time again that their rolling maul is a weapon, and New Zealand still haven't figured out how to stop it. Australia have, and they did on the weekend, and they actually pushed him out of touch. So they've obviously got something that works there, and they've seemed to have practiced it. So I think New Zealand need to take a leaf out of the Australian note there in their game, the 100th game against South Africa, and really learn from that, because I know South Africa, they'll be using it again as a line-out move as well in the 22. So they need to figure out a way to stop it the way Australia did.
Yep. Joy, I just wanted to come back to something that Roger mentioned earlier. Your early bold prediction for Australia World Cup 2023. So there 2 wins against South Africa, nothing to be sneezed at. Are you sticking with that call, firstly? And secondly, Quade Cooper, do you think he's a guy that could lead Australia 2023?
So the first part of your question, yes, I am sticking with that call. I even put some money towards it. You know, you always got to put your money where your mouth is.
That's
I've
right. That's right.
I've bet on that. It's currently paying $13 as the out and out winner for at the TAB for Australia to win the World Cup in 2023. Yeah, it'd be rude not to. Also, what's the name? So the second part of your question is Quade Cooper. It's great to see him back. You know, whether or not we believe he's more Kiwi than he is Aussie, that's irrelevant. I think as a rugby fan who grew up loving and enjoying Carlos Spencer and his theatricals, if you like, his antics on the field and his innovative skills, it's nice to see someone like Quade Cooper mature from the player that we hated, that need our captain, my captain, Richie McCaw in the head. So yeah, it's nice to see someone like that humble himself and see a different perspective on his rugby career, and actually conduct himself in a manner that is in line with what we believe the sport should be, which is, you know, it's a gentleman's game, and he is acting like a gentleman. Where years ago when he was playing, we didn't think of him as a gentleman; we just thought he's an asshole. But now, you know, you can see in certain parts of his play where you expect some flashy move or step. I don't think he stepped once in his counterattack plays. I think he was really decisive in how he viewed the backfields and whether or not there was space, and was aware of who was around him. And I think that's a level of maturity we haven't really seen from Quade Cooper, because he's usually step first, think about who to pass to later. So it was nice to see Quade in his element and get 2 under the belt. And he may be in some circles seen as the saviour, the current saviour of Australian rugby, but I'm more of the hooper. I'm in the hooper camp myself because he's a guy who is a little bit of a quiet toiler. He just does the job, does it well, but he really leads his troops well, and I think that's something to be admired and respected.
Yep, good thoughts there. Maturity is an excellent word to describe Quaid. Now, he's always been a bit of a hothead, but they interviewed him after the first South Africa game where he took that last minute kick. And he said initially he put his hand up to take the kick, but he wasn't sure if that was just his ego talking and he wanted to be the big man and win the game for them, or if he was actually or if it was right for the team. So he sort of considered the team first, whereas young him would have just said, "Yeah, I'm the man. I'll win the game for us," regardless if there were better kickers on the field or whatever. So the fact that he was able to consider that, he also considered, I think Hodge was on the field at that point, who was the best option. So he was prepared to step back if that was better for the team. And that's a maturity that we haven't seen from Quaid. I have questions over Lole Seal. So it's massively unfair. He's the guy who's played 10 before. He's 20, 21 in that bracket. So his best rugby's ahead of him, but he has holes in his game, and Quaid seems to be the better fit at this particular point in time. In 2 years' time, Lolesio is going to be better than he is now. Who's the starting 10 at that point? Who knows? But that early call on Australia, at the time I thought it was a bit of a too much BS call, but no, that's not too bad now. I'm not shaking my head as much as I was back then. But yeah, good on them. Good on them for taking South Africa. But boys, I've got a couple of questions which I'll just go through, and I wanted to sort of get your guys' take on it. So, Rog, I'll come to you. Oh, and I'll get you to answer this one. My first question: Foster getting reappointed. Is that the right call, Rog? Mate, I'll give you the first one on that one.
I don't have a foot in either camp,
Oh,
I think.
come on, mate. Not the fence one.
No, the only all I know is that I think at this point in time, it was either if they were going to change the coach prior to the next World Cup, it should have been now. However, I think that's that trust that they have in management. Foster's been part of that management from when Steve Hansen was in charge as well, so he's a good long tenure in the assistance role. So I think they've entrusted him with taking a World Cup as well. So I see no reason why he can't be that man in charge. I think it'll be too disruptive with the tenures of head coaches that we've seen in the past who have had been entrusted with 1-2 World Cups, and going back to Graham Henry through to Steve Hansen. So I think it would be a little bit unfair on him because obviously he's different coach. A good number of players have retired that were part of those successful years. And then for Steve Hansen not to be able to back up a third World Cup in a row, I think it's only fair that they just let Foster find his own flavour in amongst the current crop of All Blacks, and to give him at least a chance at the World Cup. But at the same time, who's to say at the end of next year they could get rid of him, depending on results, not only from 2021 but leading into 2022. Is there ever a right time to appoint a coach or to let go of a coach? You just need to ask the French Rugby Union. They can get rid of a coach during a World Cup. So,
yep, that's true.
So what's the set formula? New Zealand's trend is to give them long tenures. If we go back to even more recently with Graham Henry and Hansen. So, but then obviously there was that camp that wanted Razor to take the fall for leading us into another World Cup and hopefully a successful bid at, regaining that World Championship status. But Foster it is at the moment, regardless of whether I'm a Chiefs fan or not. It will be interesting to see because it's not like there's still a good handful of players. You got your Brady Retallick's back, you got your Whitelocks, you got your Adi Savia. Sam Cane will come back when he comes back. But then, you still got a good mix. Even looking at the hookers, you got Dane Coles bidding for a role there with Cody Taylor, and then Asafo Omoa and Takiao trying to vie for that third spot, or could one of them leap into the second spot? Who knows? So there's a lot of a lot of competition in the props as well. Really excited as to how Foster nurtures that talent around the front rowers as well. You got Lomax, you got Bauer, you got even Moody, and then you got Gruton, who's a new into the mix as well. But Ofa Tongafasi is still there, as well as our what's his name, that played for the Blues and then went to the Waratahs and then back at the Chiefs. Prop.
Ta'avao. Angus.
Ta'avao. Yeah, Angus Ta'avao. So there's so many matchups that you could go with, and I think that's what this championship really brings about. What is the best mix for that particular match? You're able to give more game time to the likes of a Bauer, or as we saw in the midfield against Argentina this time, and he what's his name, Quintabai. He played, his first game was against Tonga at the beginning of the international season, so he's got another shot at starting against Argentina. So who knows? Can he shore it up with the likes of Anton Leonard-Brown against the Springboks or the Australias? I think, if anything, they've been able to blood their team as best as they could through this championship into what could be a end of year tour or leading into next year. But obviously with Rugby World Cup in the back of their minds. But Foster, man for the job at the moment.
Nice, Rog, mate. What are your thoughts on that one, Joey?
Yeah, I think to echo some of what Roger's been saying, yep, he is the man for the job in some circles, unfortunately. I'm not personally a fan of Foster myself, but I do feel if they were to take him out this early in his tenure, it's unfair to him because he hasn't really been given the opportunity to show his wares with COVID interruptions and what have you. I think we'll really get to see what he's made of as a coach with this reappointment. I think it's very unfortunate for the likes of Scott Robertson, old Scotty, that he's not only going against Foster, but he's going against what seems like an age-old system, the Old Boys Club. The Old Boys Club includes a system where it's not how many votes you get, it's who's counting the votes, right? So the assistant seems to be the one who gets the nod over all other parties in a All Blacks coach selection system. So I think in order for Scott Robertson to really, without shadow of a doubt, be undeniable when it comes to selecting a coach, which for a lot of us who've enjoyed his coaching of the Crusaders over the years, even though I'm an Auckland Blues fan, I'm a fan of his coaching. I think he probably should either consider his options offshore or try to become an assistant coach first before going for the top job. But it seems like in a previous selection, a previous process, he opted for the head job rather than assistant role. So I think he would do well in a place like maybe England to be the successor of Eddie Jones or somewhere else. I'm not sure whether England has I think Scotty Robertson would be the kind of coach who, even though his style doesn't suit the current England game, I think he would select the right players to put his game forward. And under Scott Robertson, I think an England team can really outdo a current Ian Foster team. That's my own opinion, that one.
But you just even have to look at, the likes of a Hansen, even John Mitchell, going back to John Mitchell, they did do an assistance role prior to coming back and taking the head coach role. So Foster has gone about it. He's been just an assistant coach and then takes the head coach role after a length of time. So that could be a route. What I'm hoping is that is there a way that Dave Rennie could ever be in charge of the All Blacks after taking control of the Wallabies? We saw what happened with Robbie Deans, and so that was never. And at a point of time with the success that he had with the Crusaders for a long period of time in Super Rugby, he just seemed like he'd be the next head coach for the All Blacks. But at that time, he was contending with, as we know, as history would have it, the likes of Graham Henry and then Steve Hansen. So it's almost like there's just so many coaching riches that we have that someone in the end, just like players do, someone's got to miss out. So, so what do? I'm hopeful that Dave Rennie will get his chance to shine as an All Blacks coach one day, but I guess Razor Robinson is deserving of that as well with the number of titles that he's now had with the Crusaders. But that criteria is not as straightforward as some of us sort of think it should be with championships at the lower level. So
Yeah, I think Rog, that's a really good point. So we've done the assistant coach becoming head coach thing before. It worked well with Hansen, with John Mitchell, not so much. And I think Foster is closer to John Mitchell than he is to Steve Hansen. His head coaching record is poor. So I agree with you that it would have been harsh to get rid of him, but I don't think that he would win the World Cup. So I would have got rid of him, and I would have picked Scott Robertson. But as hard as that is, because that's a hard call, he would be
and I
legitimately
get that
upset.
sentiment. I get the sentiment because that's if half the country, if not more than half the country, were probably wanting the likes of a Scott Robinson to take the helm. But as we know, at the end of the day, interesting quote there by Joey. It's not how many votes you get; it's who's counting the votes. It sounds like something from Samoa Parliament. So,
It's true though. It's the truth. That's how it works in New Zealand rugby, man.
but yeah, that's an interesting analogy. So who knows? And that's the thing. Regardless of who's our opinions, in the wider community, it's at the end of the day, it comes down to the people that are paid the big bucks to make those selections, and albeit whether it be players or even coaches. So there's a panel that seems to know what they're doing. So here's hoping.
All right, boys. One thing I wanted to say, Foster, he does look to have settled on pretty close to what he thinks is his best side. So we saw a lot of changes for this game against Argentina. But a couple of guys who played on the weekend stood out. So Ethan Blackadder, Hoskins Tutu was good. Tupou Vai was good. Kuntu Paia, who you talked about, Rog. So Joey, mate, I'll come to you. Do you see? There's a few selection headaches there. Do you see anyone forcing their way through into the top team from the weekend with any of these guys?
The ones you just named?
Yeah, or anyone, because it does to me look like Foster knows who his best team is.
For me, as a fan who wants to see the potential in a player before the current form, I struggle to select the same team that Foster would probably team, I'd say, and I would go for, say, in a vital role like hooker. I think for me, and this is just me, Taukeaho gets the nod. Tight head, I would go with Nipple. I'm a big fan of Nipple right now. I think in the centres, Tupaia, he's young. He's still got some proving to do. I would stick with the old heads of ALB and Rico Ioane at centre. I would even have Rico on the wing, whichever place he can be available for. Guys like Ethan Blackadder, yes, I agree. He's an absolute workhorse and he's done some amazing things over these last couple of games. Even just coming off the bench, I think has worked really well for him. However, I wouldn't start him still. That's just because I think that word maturity comes back into this particular situation, which is Akira Ioane has really shown, how mature he actually is, and he's not just a player who is hanging off the rucks and mauls to get his hands on the ball, but he's actually someone who is actually doing work, and I've been watching him closely. 7, I think it's a tough one to pick because there's been players that have been used at 7 over the last 4 games, and unfortunately for the newcomers, I think it's hard to go past Artie. I prefer him at 7 than I do 8. And I really like the look of Jacobson. I think he's someone who can become a potential, if he's not already, leader within the group. He just has that metal about him. I like how he commands respect with how he plays. Just watching him as a fan, you can see, okay, this guy, he's got the goods. I think the locking pairing of Retallick and Whitelock is being contested by Scott Barrett, but I think the Whitelock and Retallick are still the ones. Loosehead, it's a tough one, Loosehead. It's a tough one because none of the Looseheads that have played, including Moody, have put their hand up to say, I want to have a mortgage on this jersey this season. None of them. Not one. Not one. Fullback, Geordie Barrett. I'd stick with Geordie Barrett because, although the others have come into play, and I'm a big fan of D-Mac, little man D-Mac. I think I prefer to see him come off the bench for Geordie Barrett or, somewhere in the back. 10, it'd be nice to see Richie back and combine well with Aaron Smith or see again. I can't look past Aaron Smith because TJ, as classy and as well as he can play, I'm still stuck on Aaron Smith, Richie Mo'unga combination. I think that about covers it. The wings, Jordan, mate, that guy's just, every time he touches the ball, there was a season where in the All Blacks, I think Richard Kahui, he was just on fire. Whether they used him on the wing or second 5 or whatever, he was just on fire, and that's the kind of season I see Will Jordan having right now.
Nice. It'll be interesting to see because South Africa are renowned for kicking the ball all the time, and Will Jordan, we know he's good under the high ball and his counter attack and all the rest of it. So that's going to be an interesting selection. It does look like Rico Ioane and Sevu Reece are the preferred starting wing combination. But that could be a guy who sneaks a look in if he's trying to mix it up a little bit. But Rog, mate, do you have any selection headaches that you see for this upcoming week? And anyone force their way in for you?
I think, other than everyone else that Joey's mentioned, I think Ethan Blackadder deserves a spot, if not starting. I mean, there's again riches of loose forwards that we can select from. Still with Sam Cane to come back. You got Dalton Papali'i that will probably miss out as well, even though he's been showing some good form coming off Super Rugby and into internationals. But yeah, Ethan, I like the look of Ethan Blackadder over this whole international season so far, and he's shown that he's got that grit and sort of a grafter, but at the same time, man, a workhorse. He's just everywhere and into everything. And so be interesting to see where he fits into, Foster's number one playing team. So, and if he gets on the bench, I think that would be reward for his rise in the Super Rugby as well as into internationals. So the Blackadder family can be very, very proud of his achievements thus far. I think to see where, George Bauer, because he's still, he's one of the new boys on the block at a very mature age as well. So sort of a late bloomer that's come through, but I like he's had opportunities, so hopefully he can stake a claim on that. But then you've got the likes of an Ofa Tungafasi coming back that can play both sides. I'm not sure about Rico at centre, as exciting as he is. I still prefer him as an outside back, but what he can do when he turns on that pace in the midfield, it's unfortunate that he just had that little bit of was it a double movement, or they didn't release, he didn't release the ball when he went for a second go at it. But yeah, great way that he injected himself. And when he does that, those little sort of magic touches like that and coming in on a nice angle, he's devastating. But I think he's as explosive as he is as a centre. I mean, what he does on out wide is incredible too. When in general plays, he finds himself on the wing, and so he's comfortable there anyway, especially with loose ball. But Havili, I think Havili is going to be a mainstay in that midfield, and so someone's going to miss out. Is it Havili and Antonina Brown, or is it Havili and Rico? Because we know that through Super Rugby as well as internationals, Antonina Brown can play both 12 and 13 well, and sometimes in the Chiefs they've had to have a young Quinton Tupai on the inside, or the reverse, to sort of steady the ship with when he is playing with Quinton Tupai. Is that necessary at Super Rugby when you've got guys like a Rico Ioane that can play there? David Havili now, he's got a massive stake on that number 12. Do you go with a Havili, or do you go with the exciting option of a Rico Ioane? But you got, Enor's back in the fold as well now. Is he just a utility that can find himself on the wing as well as in the centres? We know the pace that he has pre-injury. How is he now post-injury? But it's good to see he's back in the mix. Interesting that Patrick Tuipulotu's first game in the Rugby Championship was just on the weekend. We know what he can do at Super Rugby. We know the presence that he brings in the All Blacks as well, and what he can do when he's on point. But will he be the third lock, or will it be Barrett behind your Brodie Retallick and Sam Whitelock? And then where do you fit a guy like a young Va'i, because we can see the athleticism that he has as a really young, agile lock, but at the same time, doesn't go missing in the tight stuff either. So I think there's a lot of headaches right across the board. And then who misses out in the wide, in the outside backs? So Will Jordan, George Bridge, Sevu Reece, Damien McKenzie. Do you include him in your, if not starting, whether it be fullback? Probably not at first five, because you've got the Richie Moangas and the Bowden Barretts, but who misses out in the fullback? In fullback alone, Damien McKenzie, Will Jordan, or Geordie Barrett, who can contend for those three positions, as well as a Bowden Barrett. So I guess what both Geordie and Damien McKenzie have on their side is the utility tab. but then at the expense of starting, they just find themselves on the bench because they can cover multiple positions. But yeah, Richie Mo'unga to come back. I think he's got number one seal on 10 at the moment, with Bowden Barrett being a close second.
Yeah. Yeah, good thoughts. I think we're all sort of on similar pages there. So I think Ethan Blackadder is the guy to me who's really stood out. Every opportunity he's got, he's looked really good. But Akira, he's been amazing at 6. So I can't drop Akira for as great as Ethan Blackadder has been. But it's awesome just to have number 6s galore. You think that Frizzell's still running around in the NPC. Yeah, he's a bloody
Then when you
another good
mention
number 6.
Akira as well, Stace, and what you mentioned too, Joey, about and how we talked about Quade Cooper, the maturity he's got, and you talk about the James O'Connors as well. But then Akira Ioane, for his journey in the last couple of years, I think maturity is a massive word that you can now associate with him. The way that he used to behave in certain circumstances and incidents on the field for the Blues, or and those were the little work-ons, and whether that was because he was either overthinking the role or compensating for what was causing him frustration. We can see him now; he just seems a little bit more settled in the role, not only as whatever loose forward role he's playing, but as an All Black as well. And that's where he's finding his feet as a person and bringing that to the All Black role that he has now. And so you see these guys like a Quay Cooper who talks about, regardless of whether he was to miss that kick or get it, he's at peace because he knows it's just a game at the end of the day. And so that's interesting to hear these guys who used to, blow their trumpets all the time and have that persona that comes across that, they don't care about anyone else. But at the end of the day, they come to that realization where they can then just, regardless of the pressure that's on them, they can perform because they're just concentrating solely on the game. But then they have a new found perspective about it's just a game at the end of the day.
Yeah. There was a I think maybe a couple of weeks ago, there was a lot of pushing and shoving, and I think their first game against Argentina, and they were like grabbing each other, and the All Blacks were getting involved in a little bit of off the ball scuffle, and it was actually Akira Ioane who came in and grabbed the All Black guys and said, "Hey guys, come on, no pushing and shoving. Let's keep our discipline." Now that's not something that he's ever done. He's normally the guy in the middle there, losing his head and being the hothead. So for him to be the guy who come up and try and calm the rest of the All Black players down speaks to what you guys mentioned, that maturity factor. Really important factor in rugby now that we've talked about Quaid and Akira, and it can turn your career around if you can lose that hotheadness. So good to see two guys like that doing the business and getting it done and changing their ways. But boys, we're going a bit over time, so I wanted to move on. We've got our TAB account, boys. So we've got $145 in the account. We've still got some bets pending, which looked pretty good. But I thought, seeing us three here, we'll have a pick each, just a tip each, and we'll do a multi, try and get our balance up. So I'm throwing you guys on the spot a little bit. I'll come up with my one first, just so I can give you guys some time to think of something. But just so you guys are aware, there's some big fixtures over the weekend. So I'm just having a look now. Tasman is playing Waikato. So that's first against second in the ITM Cup, or whatever, the Mitre 10 Cup, or whatever we're calling it these days. Bay of Plenty, who was our pick, Roger's pick. They're not travelling so good. They're coming second at last, actually. But they're playing Taranaki, who are undefeated in the championship. And, of course, we've got to mention All Blacks versus Springboks. So, we'll have a pick each for a multi. And while you guys are thinking about it, I'll put my tip in first. So I'm really interested in that midfield matchup. So we talked about the All Black midfield a little bit, and I think Damien Dialende and Lucanio they had a legitimate shout to be the best midfield combination in the world. But I like the All Blacks midfield. I think it's building nicely. And David Havili, who you talked about, Roger, I'm a big fan of his. So I think that they'll get out on top, and I'll pick him for to score a try. David Havili to score a try this week. So, Joey, mate, do you want to jump in? Have you got a pick for a multi?
Mate, I totally forgot about David Havili, mate. Oh, he would be, he'd be my second five.
Yeah.
In terms of picks, where is the game between Bay of Plenty and Taranaki being played?
It's been played in Bay of Plenty, so...
Okay. Let's go with the... even though you're not allowed big crowds in level 2, let's go with the home team, the Bay.
Nice. Bay of Plenty to get a win there. Roger, do you like anything of any of the games on the weekend just to put the dollars up a bit?
So Australia is playing Argentina?
Yeah.
Or they're
Yeah,
not
Australia's
included?
playing Argentina. Yep, I don't bring that game up, but if you've got a pick in there, I just picked out a couple of games that I'll watch. Actually, that's why I said those games. But there's a whole heap of rugby matches on this weekend. So if you've got something for that one, we'll check
Yeah, I
it.
reckon Australia to win comfortably over Argentina.
So
Or
what,
do you
Australia
want a
13
try scorer?
plus?
13 plus Australia. I don't know
13
how
plus?
these TAB things work. Sorry. I just win, lose, or draw. Yeah, 13 plus Australia.
And did we pick an AB Springboks result?
Now, have you got one? I just picked Havili to get a try in that game. But yeah. You got something you want to check
So
in
there's
with?
multi things. Everything needs to happen.
Yeah. I would say...
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yep.
It's tough for the Springboks to... And it'll come down to how Pollard is feeling, because he's a vital piece in their attack, and his goal kicking as well. I'd go AB's 12 and under. I think it's going to be a tight match compared to the Aussie ones.
Yeah. There's that old saying, it's like styles make fights, and you talked about how Australia were able to stop that rolling maul, which is a big part of what South Africa do, but New Zealand, they have problems with it. So South Africa's style can trouble New Zealand more than, say, Australia's style. Australia play similar to New Zealand, just not as good. So, yeah, I think the Springboks will, even though they've been poor, I'm with you, 1 to 12 on that one. I think we might get good odds on that because I think the All Blacks are like quite high, heavy favourites.
Like you wouldn't bet on the Springboks to get a hiding like they did at Albany, 57-0. But
But he's hoping.
Then when the All Blacks are on, man, if they ever get a game, regardless of who the opposition is, because they will have their tight games, they will have their close wins, and as you reminded us of that game in Albany a few years ago, when they're on, they can roll some teams that you don't expect them to do. So yeah, it depends on how good the machine is rolling on the day, I suppose. But they have that potential to do so once they're lethal. They're lethal.
So you think All Blacks 13 plus, Rog? Or just adding some
I'd
comments for some
13
splinters,
plus.
extra splinters? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But no. But Joey's calling 12 and under, so
No. I just threw it out there. That's all. I just threw it out there just because just because things like complacency can come into the All Blacks play, and South Africa could be hungry for a win.
I think they are sort of, because even though they had a lot of percentage possession against the Argentinians, they didn't. I think they had lapses there where they could have potentially blown that score out, but they didn't. So I'm thinking that was their complacent game, and then hopefully this weekend is going to be boys are marching in with their number one squad.
Yeah, true. I wonder if See, I've got this theory. Just to jump in a little bit into what's happening in the NRL at the moment with your team there, Roger. I think Manly threw that game against Storm so that they can get the easy ride to the final. And I think that could be what's happening here, you know. Not that South
Cam right
Africa
now
threw the
is
game.
shaking his head in disgust that you would even suggest that we would be throwing games.
I know you agree with me to some level.
Eagles never throw games. We put our 100% foot forward, and whatever eventuates. It just happened to be that we were on the lesser of the table that day. But
but yeah, I think
whoever it is, man,
I think South Africa, Stace. I think South Africa, they are, they're wounded right now by these 2 losses, and unfortunately for them, I think they're not really gelling with their coach the way they did with Rassie Erasmus. And I think they yet to, I guess, repay his faith in them, selecting them, or do something for him, because and I think it'll all those losses against Australia will go away with this one win against the All Blacks.
That's
if
true.
they were to beat the All Blacks.
Yeah.
That's true.
I agree.
We've got to keep in mind, South Africa, whatever you think of them, they're still the world champions and they beat the Lions. I mean, that's a pretty formidable, whatever you want to say, about them. That's a pretty impressive resume. So we can't take them lightly. But I'm with you. So I think the All Blacks will win. A lot of people think it's going to be a bloodbath because of the 2 losses to Australia. But yeah, I'm with you that the styles make the fight, and their style will trouble New Zealand more than other teams. So, sorry, Roger, 2 against 1. We're going to go All Blacks 1 to 12. But we've got a good multi. We've got a 4-way multi. So hopefully it all comes through, boys. But we're just about to close up our podcast with our 4-way multi. But so we'll just get some last thoughts, boys. Just in closing. So, Rog, mate, I'll come to you first, brother. Any last thoughts on rugby? Anything rugby related, or just anything you want to say in closing?
Nico Jones, part of Moana Pasifika, maybe.
Ooh. Not a bad shout,
just
mate.
Putting it out there.
Not bad.
Putting it out there.
That's not a bad shout at all.
Just got to calm down. He was, he was trying to staunch out the. He was showing glimpses of the old Akira Ioane trying to take on the smallest guy. Just got to concentrate. There's glimpses of Dane Coles once upon a time, but still is.
Interesting.
But yeah, that's my Nico Jones. Could he be part of the 30?
Ooh, nice. Joey, mate, you got any just final words in closing our pod?
Mate, I'm a little bit excited about the mystery 30 that Moana Pasifika have. And after this, I'm actually going to go write a list of who I think it could possibly be. And I'd like to compare notes with who you guys might think if you had any people in mind.
That could be a podcast in itself.
Yeah.
30, the dirty 30.
I'll try and send it through before they reveal the actual 30.
Yeah, same. For me, look, it's I think the world order in terms of rugby is where we as Kiwis would like it to be. We're ranked number 1 over South Africa. I believe ranked number 2. They had the number 1 ranking. They lost it to us. Who knows how long we've got it for and how that ranking system goes. But it's nice to be ranked number 1 again. It's a nice to have. It's not a must have for us. For us, the must have is the World Cup. I'm not sure that's going to happen this World Cup coming up. But I am sure that it's going to be a World Cup worth watching.
Yeah. I think a lot of that ranking business has got to do with the volume of games as well. The more games you have, the more chances of you climbing the ladder. Because Argentina's still in the top 10, so how that works, go figure.
Yeah, nice there. I agree with all of that, boys. Some good rugby coming up. So I know I'll be spending a bit of time on the couch this week, not we're on level 3, so you still can't really go anywhere. But yeah, I just want to say thanks to all our listeners for joining us for another episode of the Counter Ruck, and thanks to everyone who nominated us for our New Zealand Podcast Award. It's really appreciated. The Counter Ruck is available through the usual platforms, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. There's a couple more which I can't recall, but basically anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll find us on there. So keep listening, and don't forget to click the subscribe button. Boys, just want to say thanks for being part of the pod. If it wasn't for you guys and your knowledge of the game and your banter and your humour, we wouldn't have got the nomination. I'm sure of it. So, Rog, Joey, you guys are the regulars who keep the podcast running. So, thanks again, boys, for being part of the podcast this week. Cams is doing the fact checking and the producing for the WesWes Network that we're part of. So, yeah, just appreciate the knowledge and the enthusiasm. So, Joey, Rog, and Cam's doing the work in the background. So, cheers, boys. We'll be back again soon, and yeah, see you then. Cheers.
Arriba!
Thank you.